In 2014, Donald Sterling made national news when racially insensitive comments he made were disclosed to the media. At the time, Sterling was a wealthy owner of a professional basketball team, and the comments were recorded in a private conversation with his friend V. Stiviano. As a direct result of those comments being made public, Sterling lost his team, paid a $2.5 million fine, and was banned from the NBA for life. And his comments kicked off a national debate and discussion about race and power in America, and whether a man's ignorant but not illegal comments should justify the loss of his business. What never entered the discussion was a consideration of Sterling's right to privacy over his comments, or Stiviano's alleged intrusion into his privacy when she recorded them, without his notice or his consent. Recording someone's conversation is offensive on its face, and actually illegal in many states. But this never made the national news or a trending topic in social media. And with this story, we see the fickle love-hate relationship we as Americans have with privacy. We say it's important. We say we want to protect it. But our appreciation for it is selective, as if to suggest some things or some people don't deserve privacy. Indeed, many people justified Stiviano's disclosure as righting a wrong or being newsworthy. But who makes such a subjective determination? And what if it were you? What if the conversation recorded was a spouse disclosing an affair or life-ending medical condition, or your daughter crying over the posting of pictures of her by an angry ex-boyfriend? What if it were you? Concerns over privacy are nothing new. In 1890, Samuel Warren and Louis Brandeis penned a famous law review article in which they lamented the encroachment of technology into their private lives. In it, they argued for a new legal right, a right to privacy, and they distinguished this right from a right of privacy and property, recognizing the inviolate personality, the idea that who we are as citizens, individuals, humans, is intrinsically tied to our need for privacy. Privacy enables us to be human. Without it, we cease to be so. Why? Well, privacy allows us to be vulnerable with ourselves as we discover who we are, what we believe, and who we want to be. But also vulnerable with others as we seek to make that connection with another person, and in doing so, share those ideas without fear of judgment. Indeed, privacy is that refuge from the glaring eyes of those who could not care less about your growth as part of the human family. And when privacy is gone, we recoil, we withdraw. We cease to be who we truly are. At the same time, privacy is a value, as different as each of us, and say our taste in music, sports, or clothes. And like that, it changes over time and with experience. If you've been the victim of revenge porn, or identity theft, or just gossip in your neighborhood, you have a different appreciation for privacy, possibly, than somebody who has not. It's as layered and as complex as each of us. Now, at its most basic definition, privacy is the right to choose when, to whom, and to what extent we disclose information about ourselves. More simplistically, it's a two-party transaction between a giver and a taker. Privacy exists and is valued when a giver retains the control over what she shares with the taker and what she holds private. Conversely, privacy is lost and violated when she loses that control and information shared without her consent. Now, privacy, I believe, is more important than ever, for lots of reasons. Here's but one. Now, you can't call it a mullet. That term did not come into existence until 1994, and this picture was taken in before that. And to be sure, this wasn't a private moment. Oh no, I walked around in public like that for years. But at least I knew the evidence was limited to scrapbooks and yearbooks in the Orlando, Florida vicinity. The distribution was limited. I stand before you today a grown man, much more emotionally capable of handling the disclosure of such evidence of a poor life choice. More so than I ever was when I was 18. More importantly, I'm choosing this place, this time, this purpose to share this picture, to do some good, if anything, to increase your mullet awareness. The youth today don't have that luxury. They've never known a world without the internet. Every zit, every breakup, every missed free throw, every drop pass, recorded and retained indefinitely, potentially identifying them for their entire lives. Hopefully a disclosure ends up just like that, a funny story in college. But they can very rarely leave this behind and go off and reinvent themselves in college. And oftentimes the harm is something worse: depression, anxiety, substance abuse, physical harm, yes, even suicide, death, over the reality or just the possibility that everybody knows. Privacy is more important today for the ease with which we can give away our data and the ease with which we can take it, intentionally or not. But it's way too easy to blame the internet. No. The internet is but a tool that facilitates the choices of the user. We are nosy by nature. We have become voyeurs, insensitive, or maybe just unaware to the impacts on someone's privacy. So if we're the problem, we can be the solution. We, us, right? Two-party transaction, givers, takers. So what can we do? Be better givers. What's your value for privacy? Have you thought about it? Is your behavior and your thoughts in line with that value? Do other people know your value for privacy? Just because someone asks for your information, whether it's a business or a person, doesn't mean you have to give it. Do you read privacy policies, terms and conditions every time you download an app? Do you? Do you? And think differently about the way you share data, not just directly, but indirectly, through photos, social media posts, even the numerous ways of which information comes off your device, unless you tell it not to. And teach our children that privacy and discretion are lifelong values, for the world is pulling information from them at a time when they are least prepared to deal with the consequences. Teach them that a friend today is not necessarily a friend tomorrow. Surely, if we can empower them to make better choices in food, colleges, clothes, we can teach them a value for discretion, what information to share, and why. We can also be better takers. Treat others' information the way you would treat your own. If you hear a conversation you shouldn't, walk away. But if you can't avoid it, don't repeat it. Don't embellish upon it. Likewise, if you get an email with the latest celebrity hack or gossip about someone in your neighborhood, don't read it, delete it. Better yet, push back. We can all be better users of information. Iron sharpens iron. And there but for grace, we could all be the subject of that email or text. Now, I know what you're thinking. Scotty, that's a cute little idea. Yes, it is. Warm and fuzzy bunnies. It's a dream. It's not reality. Not in the modern world. I hear that a lot, and I get it. So I offer up one man's story. Steve Bartman. Steve Bartman was a lifelong fan of the Chicago Cubs, and in 2003, he made national news when he did something every single one of us would have done in the same situation. He reached for a souvenir foul ball at a game. This is no ordinary game. This was Game 6 of the National League Championship Series. The winner of the series goes on to the World Series, something the Cubs had never done since 1945. So there was Steve, reaching for the ball, with no less than 5 other people. But Steve's hand hit the ball, knocking it to the ground foul, away from the oncoming glove of the Cubs outfielder. And what ensued was tailor-made for the Cubs' curse-ridden history. They blew Game 6, lost Game 7, never made it to the World Series, and despite all the errors of the coaches and team, the blame of the city fell on one man's shoulders. He was escorted from the stadium that night for his physical safety, and despite a heartfelt apology in the paper the next day, didn't matter. The city had their scapegoat. He was a pariah. Steve couldn't leave the house. If he could, or tried, or turned on the TV or radio, he was reminded immediately of his very human mistake. Or maybe just the mistake of being human. So what did he do? Surely Steve left the city. Witness relocation, right? You can't stay in Chicago after that, man. Change your name, get out. No. Steve still lives in the city, still uses the name Steve Bartman. I think he still works for the same company. But he's become a virtual ghost in the third largest city in our country. How does that happen in the modern world? Well, I think Steve made choices. He chose not to tell the story again. He chose not to profit from the story. But more importantly, he reached out to a friend, an attorney, and asked that friend for his privacy back. I want to be normal again. So that friend, other friends, family, even his employer, went to work building a wall around Steve, a wall of respect for his privacy, and by all accounts, they've stood that wall because very little has been told about Steve. I'd say the media and the city have even gotten in on it, perhaps because they regret the way they treated him, or perhaps because they've learned what all of us have, I think, through his story. We're all but one step away from losing so much more. Privacy is possible today. It's essential. It may not look like it used to, and it may not be a foul ball. Maybe it's an email that shouldn't have been sent or a conversation heard that shouldn't have been. But we all want the ability to recover from a mistake and not be defined by it for life. It's possible with all of us. It's just a matter of give and take. Thank you.